more stories and he can say meaner things without the repercussions, so here we go.
Great, Gray's gonna help me. Say hi, Gray.
Hi.
Hi, okay, good. So I talked to my good friend Brennan, who lives in Dallas and has had many late nights with Paul, and I said, I have to say something for Paul's 60th, and he said, you have to write that down because there is too much material. So I did. So I want to just say to the Westport elite in the room, I am Paul's much younger brother, Craig. Paul equals Craig minus 12. So that's how we start. I have to start by thanking you for marrying Karen, my amazing sister-in-law. Best party planner, amazing job, Karen. Tonight's amazing, so shout out to Karen for that. And for those in the room that don't know, and the family in the back was there, my brother flew all the way to Cedar Rapids, Iowa, to find a woman this amazing to marry. Karen had never met an Italian before, and she had never seen anyone who had worn slacks and Gucci's. This will be a recurring theme. And it was love at first sight. So there you go. My sister Jen, in fact, she told me this morning, we were talking about Paul's attire, and she said before I was around that Paul used to love wearing Izod shirts. And Izod shirts, apparently they made his biceps look really good. But what I didn't know is that Paul used to rip the alligator off of the Izod shirts. And I said, well, that's weird. And she said, yeah, he was very anti-label. And I thought, you know what? I'm just blaming that on Westport then, because he's all into labels now. And speaking of the Iowa wedding, I had the pleasure of giving the best man toast at that wedding. I was 16, I was still in high school, and my biggest fear was, how many beers can I drink before I give this speech? They put me on at the very end. I wasn't worried tonight, so I've had plenty of beers. We're all good. When I thought about the jokes that I gave that night, I talked about the usuals, which was Paul's receding hairline and his height. And I realized how badly that backfired on me because I stand here bald and 5'8". So I guess the joke's on me, right, Greg? As we talked about, Paul's very prideful of his hair. You may not know, but I heard that Aunt Debbie in the back gave him his first bowl cut, but also taught him the perfect way to basically, move his hair, the middle, whatever he used to do, the feather. If you haven't ever tried to touch Paul's hair, you should try. You will immediately be slapped. And I'm laughing because one of my jokes was about Paul being a travel baseball coach in Westport and being the only one that used to blow dry his hair before games, because I've never seen him in a baseball cap. That said, we talked about my father. My brother was like a second father to me. We talked, baseball, when I learned to pitch, it was Paul in the front yard with a catcher's mitt. When I remember waking up on Christmas morning, it was actually Paul's gift that I remember opening up the most. So he was amazing. When he taught me about the birds and the bees, he played me a Meatloaf song. He taught me to drive. We did donuts in a cul-de-sac. And on the way there, whenever we'd pull up to a light, he had me put up a sign that said, "Eat me," to the car next to us. And the driving theme, Paul wanted to feel better about being this kind of driver, so he married Crash Karen. You may not know, but when they lived in Europe, Karen was only allowed to drive Land Rovers purely for safety purposes. She once locked up a one-way bridge with a head-on collision. Every single person at that private school was late for school that day. When I think about big parties, I think about New Fairfield. And Paul was in his 20s and he just started to work. My sister was in high school and I was in middle school. And they used to throw these massive parties, and I was thinking to myself, how did they get me to avoid tattling on them with my parents? And it was pretty simple. They would just let me invite anyone I wanted, as long as I didn't tell mom and dad. The party days started well before Connecticut. My sister reminded me of an infamous family story when Paul skipped a family trip to the Hamptons when we still lived in Houston because he had to watch the house. A few days later, the landline rings at a rickety beach house in the Hamptons, and it was none other than Jim Madigan, who was my parents' neighbor in Texas. He tells my dad, "I didn't want to bother you, but there is such a big party at your house that there are naked girls in the front yard." My dad, this story is true, my dad took the phone and he said, "Tell Paul I'm coming home to kill him." He made it, he's okay. I get married to Jessica, and Paul returns the best man favor to me. Thank you for that. I was 26, but there was a dilemma. My friends all had serious cash flow problems for what Paul's perspective was of a proper bachelor party. No problem, Paul fixed it. He called the Bellagio, and he said he had very serious clients that were coming into town that weekend. So we show up at an airport. There were black cars there waiting for us with signs. We put 10 people into each suite. And my friends would tell you not a single one of them outdrank Paul or Uncle David that weekend. The rest of the story is put away like the Epstein files. Some in this room were also at Paul's 50th, and if you remember it, we toured to fake Vegas in eastern Connecticut. I am still shocked we did not get arrested. And now I only go back to Foxwoods as Mohegan is completely off limits. But here you are, big bro, you survived all that, 60 years old. As the boys were saying, keep being a phenomenal leader. We love watching you grow companies, care for others, be mentors. You know, as I think about the relationships that you've built and that I've built with your kids, I hope all of our boys see the relationship that we have and want to emulate that. You are fun Uncle Paul. You are now Grand Paul to Vinny over there. And we love you very much. And salute. And salute. We obviously welcome anybody else that would like to grab the mic, but I did want to give the DJ an opportunity to play one song that we thought would be a Paul soundtrack for the evening.